A very good morning, students. Welcome back to online classes on programming for problem solving course. After your lab externals, again we are resuming your online classes. So quickly we'll have a revision. So far whatever concepts we discussed, hardly we have completed two classes. Before your lab externals. So in those two classes, what we have discussed, I will revise once and will continue with the further concepts. So we discussed the course structure. I mean, what is the course name and what is the code? How many credits does this subject is having? Is this subject a lab-oriented subject? And for the lab, what is the code? How many credits? All these things we have discussed in our introductory session. Okay, so we said the complete course is divided into 5 sessions, and I said 5 units, and I said in 52 sessions I'm going to wind up this 5 units. So 5 unit different chapter names and their associated sessions, everything I have explained. Then the unit wise topic wise discussion also we had. Then this is our first unit, and inside the first unit we said we have 3 chapters. That is, the first chapter name is Introduction to Programming, then Idea of Algorithm, and the Representation of Algorithm. So we started the first chapter, that is Introduction to Programming, and in that basically we started the discussion of a computer, what exactly a computer is. And the topics associated with that computer we initiated, the discussion we initiated. So a computer we defined in different ways. So basically we said it is an electronic device because it is made up of many different electronic components. So a computer is nothing but it is an electronic device which performs certain tasks, like it will store the data. Whenever you want to see the data, you can retrieve the data, you can manipulate the data with the help of a computer. So all these type of tasks or operations we can perform with the help of a computer. So in order to take the input from outside world, the computer make use of input devices, and in order to give the output to the outside world, it will make use of the output devices. So internal to the, in between input and output, whenever we are talking about the processing or whenever we are talking about the manipulation, it make use of the CPU. So that CPU is nothing but central processing unit, and it in turns having many different components. Okay, so if you see the last point in this discussion, a computer is a system made up of two major components. One is hardware and the other one is software. So inside a computer, whatever components we are going to have, they have been categorized into two. One is hardware and the other one is software. So we need to discuss, we need to have a brief clarity on what is hardware and what is software. So we started the discussion with hardware, and hardware is nothing but, we said, all the physical components which you can see, which you can touch, you can smell, all the physical components are nothing but the computer hardware. So example, your keyboard, mouse, because they are physical ones, you can touch them, you can see them, you can feel them. Okay, so uh, these hardware components, we said they have been divided into 3 different types. They have been classified into 3 different types. The first one is input devices, the second one processing unit, and the last one is output devices. So this is the block diagram. So with respect to hardware, if you see, this is the block diagram of your computer, where we are going to have the input devices. Okay, one side all input devices and other side all output devices, and in between we are going to have the processing unit, and this processing unit is responsible for processing or manipulating the data. And this processing unit, central processing unit, generally, because it is we call it as a CPU, central processing unit, it is having 3 different things internal to it. One is ALU, CU, and MU. ALU stands for arithmetic logic unit, CU stands for control unit, and MU stands for memory unit. So when we do the discussion of processing unit, again we discuss these things in detail. What is the role and responsibility of each of these ALU, CU and MU, we will discuss once again. Okay, so quickly we'll go and we'll see each of these individual things separately. The first one, input devices. So input devices, yeah, this is another block diagram of the computer. So where you can see what are generally the examples for these input devices. Your scanner is an input device, keyboard is an input device, mouse is an input device. So all these are connected to the computer. And then output devices, yes, we are having printer, we are having monitor, and they are also connected to the computer. And this is our CPU. And the arrow marks, if you see, from input devices towards the CPU we are having, and from CPU towards the output devices we are having. So generally the data flow, okay, from the input devices towards the CPU, the data flow will be in this direction, and from the CPU to the output devices, the data flow will be in this direction. That's the reason we have pointed the arrow marks in this way, in this direction. Okay, and how the data flow internal to the CPU, in the sense between ALU, CU, MU, it is bidirectional. Okay, it is bidirectional. Whenever it is required, the ALU will, I mean, communicate with control unit, and which in turn communicate with memory unit. Likewise, the communication between these three units, ALU, CU, MU, it is bidirectional. Hopefully you understood. So yeah, now the input devices, yeah, generally to give the data, to enter the data into the computer, we make use of the input devices. Example, keyboard, mouse, scanner, microphone, camera, all these are examples for input devices. Okay, so you can even add further over here, like if you are playing a video game, there we make use of a joystick, isn't it? uh, a, a handy thing with all the controls which are helpful in playing the game. So that kind of thing we call it as a joystick. So maybe if you have seen the PlayStation and that Microsoft Xbox, then you will be aware of that joysticks, isn't it? Nowadays many different controls came into market. You can write all those controls. If you remember, you can write all those controls as input devices to the computer, because your Xbox or your PlayStation, it is more or less like a computer only. Okay, then output devices. What sort of output devices we can have? I mean, first of all, why these output devices are helpful, in the sense they are helpful in taking the information. See, whenever we are talking about input devices, we are saying data, and whenever we are talking about output devices, we are saying information. And the difference between data and information I have explained already in my previous session. Okay, data is a bulky thing, information is a specific thing. So bulky thing we give as an input to the computer, and specific thing we retrieve from that data. So information we retrieve from that data. Okay, so output devices are helpful to display or to take the output, that is nothing but information, from the computer. Remember this one. So whenever you are taking the information from the computer, we make use of the output devices. See, I will give you one simple example how these information data can be understood. So let us assume in your computer you may be having some thousands of songs, isn't it? MP3 songs. We are loading MP3 songs into our mobiles, into our computers. Okay. So whenever you want, I mean, all that loading, we can consider it as input to the computer, isn't it? So if you are loading some 100 songs into your mobile phone, that 100 songs, it is a bulky thing, so we can consider it as an input, because we are loading into the computer, isn't it? And whenever you are playing a song, a particular song from that bulk of songs, it is not possible to play all that bulk together, isn't it? Can we play that 100 songs at once? Not possible. At a time you can play only one song. So that one song is your data, I mean information. That one song is your information, because you are going, when you are taking the output, you are going specifically, but when you are giving the input, you are not going specifically, you are giving the bulk as an input. So 100 songs as an input we have given to the computer, but when we are playing only one song. When we are listening, we are playing only one song. So 100 songs, data, playing one song, information. So in that way, giving input, we will give like a bulk, taking output will take only one specific information. Okay. So example, for taking the output from a computer, listening to song, we can make use of speakers. If you are printing something on a paper, we make use of printer, and if you are watching something on a computer, we make use of monitor. So all these are output device examples. Okay. And when we are talking about this printer and monitor, we need to focus on one more thing, that is soft copy and hard copy. So what is soft copy, what is hard copy? We need to have the clarity over here. So if you have a PDF document inside the computer, we call it as a soft copy. Okay. Suppose I have given the notes to you for preparation, and that notes in the form of PDF files only I will give. So if you have downloaded that PDF file from the internet and you stored in your mobile phone, that PDF file is nothing but the soft copy. Okay, soft copy. But you feel at some point you feel that having the soft copy is not sufficient, and it is not proper to do the preparation. So what you do, you will take the printout of that PDF document, isn't it? Printout. So that printout on a paper, when you are getting that same document, we will call it as an hard copy. Okay, soft copy and hard copy, you have to understand these two things. So next is processing unit. Generally the central processing unit, CPU, it is responsible for executing all the instructions, whatever programs we are having in our computer. In order to execute those programs, or in order to get the output from those programs, the CPU, central processing unit, is responsible. Okay. So this central processing unit, what it will do means, it will do the processing of instructions such as arithmetic calculations, comparison between the data, and movement of data. Okay. Arithmetic calculations in the sense, uh, whenever you are having some sort of addition, multiplication, subtraction kind of calculations in your program or in your data, such kind of calculations your CPU will perform. Not only that, comparison of data. If you are comparing two numbers, if you are comparing two entities for equivality, that also your CPU will do. Next is the movement of data. If you are copying some files from one location to the other location inside your computer, if you are copying some files from the computer to the pen drive, or from the pen drive to the computer, this movement of data, who will do means your central processing unit will do. Okay. So all these sort of operations, performing arithmetic operations, performing comparisons between the data, and movement of data, everything will be done by the central processing unit only. You simply remember one thing: without the involvement of CPU, no single task will be performed inside your computer. All the tasks, whatever the computer will perform, definitely there is a role of your CPU. Okay. Ultimately your CPU will have its role, its involvement in every single processing. Okay. So yeah, next point, if you see the modern day computers, okay, in today's computers, what is happening means, because nowadays the users or the um, computer operators, they are having more hopes on the computer. They want the computer to perform multitasking at lightning speed. So what they are expecting, they are expecting, if they are initiating some sort of job, the job has to be performed in fraction of seconds. Okay. Let us assume that you are playing some song. Okay. So what you will do, you will go to that song and you will double click on that song. Okay. So you are initiating, I mean, how you are initiating the job, how you are initiating the task, by double clicking on the file, or if it is in your mobile, simply by clicking on that file. Okay. So when you are clicking on that file or on that song, and what is happening, instantly that song will start playing or that movie will start playing, isn't it? Instantly, I mean within fraction of seconds it will start playing. So let us assume that you are clicking now and the song is playing like after 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Okay, it is the system, the computer is taking some sort of delay, okay, in order to give the response to the user. So such computer you will accept, such mobile phone you will accept? Nobody will accept. You will say that it is very slow, isn't it? You will not accept such a thing. So, so the same thing is happening in modern day computers as well. Even though they are faster, the people or the users, the computer operators, they feel that it is not super fast. So in order to make your computer super fast, what they are doing, instead of having one single CPU, now they are installing more than one CPU. Okay, more than one CPUs. So the modern day computers, they may have more than one CPU. Okay, yeah, inside the CPU, internal to the CPU, we are going to have three parts. What are they? In the sense, the first thing is ALU, then CU, then MU. What is ALU here? I mean, in that picture maybe it was not visible, but over here it is clearly visible. You can see ALU stands for arithmetic and logic unit, CU stands for control unit, and MU stands for memory unit. Arithmetic logic unit is responsible for performing arithmetic and logical calculations. Okay, arithmetic calculations in the sense all arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, then comparison operations. Okay, logical operations, checking whether two numbers are equal, less than, which one is less than, which one is greater than, likewise. All that sort of calculations your ALU will perform. Then control unit, it will give the control signals. Like in our body, we are having different systems, isn't it? One such, I mean, one respiratory system we call it as, which is responsible for transmitting the blood, okay, to our entire body, to each and every cell in our body. Okay, next thing is we have the nerve system, okay, which will sense each and every part of our body. So in that same way, sensing in the sense, is it sending any kind of a physical thing? No, it is sending signals. Basically sensing, it will be happen basically with the help of signals. Okay, if you are sensing, if you are touching something, you can easily sense that thing. How it is possible means, the that uh, the touch will send a kind of signal to our brain so that we can feel that physical part or physical component. In that same way, inside your computer, each part of the computer, each hardware component of your computer, how they will interact in the sense by sending the signals, by sending signals to each other. Okay, suppose if the keyboard wants to interact with the CPU, how it will interact in the sense by sending some signals. If the mouse want to interact, same thing will happen. Okay, your monitor wants to interact, same thing will happen, like that. So these sort of control, sort of controlling, who will take care of? In the sense, the control unit will take care of. The control unit is responsible for controlling all the components of your computer by sending and receiving signals. Remember this one. Okay, so ALU will perform operations, control unit will control the parts, components. Next, memory unit, it is the storage area where you can store the data, where you can store the data or information, whatever it is. Okay, the memory unit is used for storing the data. The memory unit is classified into two types. This is the classification, this is not the types. Okay, this is the classification, and it is of two. First one is volatile memory. The second one is non-volatile memory. What is volatile memory? In the sense, this I have explained earlier. So volatile memory in the sense, whatever content, whatever data you are storing in this volatile memory, what will happen if the power goes down to such device, power goes down to this volatile memory device, what will happen? Whatever content, whatever data you have stored inside that memory, it will be lost. Okay, it will be deleted. Remember this one, it is very important question for your viva. the difference between volatile and non-volatile memory. Volatile and non-volatile memory. Definitely they will ask this question. Okay. So volatile memory, simply remember, it is a type of memory, or it is a kind of memory where whatever data you have stored, if the power goes down, the data will be lost or the data will be deleted. Next is non-volatile memory. It is opposite to the volatile memory type. Here the data will remain permanent. Permanent in the sense, even if the power goes down to these type of memory devices, the data will remain unchanged. The data will remain intact. Remember this one. Okay. There will be no loss to the data. Volatile memory, it is a memory type, it is a memory device where whatever data we are storing, suddenly if the power goes down, if the power goes off, what will happen? The data will be lost or the data will be deleted. Non-volatile memory, yeah, to this device, even if the power goes down, nothing will change, nothing will harm. Okay, no loss of data. Okay, no deletion of data. Remember this one. So the next thing, these are the types of storage devices. Those are classifications and these are the type of storage devices. Okay. In a general purpose computer, we are not talking about any super computer or something. In a general purpose, the computers which we are using in our computer labs or which you are having with you at home, we call them as general purpose computers. There is no specific work. You can perform any type of work with the help of that computers. Okay. So in a general purpose computer, so we may find the following types of storage devices. Okay. The primary storage, the auxiliary storage, the cache memory and the registers. Okay. Four different types of memories we are having: primary, secondary, cache and registers. The first type, primary type, why we are calling these memory types as primary memory, in the sense because they plays a vital role in the functioning of the computer. So without these devices, it is highly impossible to run this computer without these memory types. Okay, a place where the programs and data are stored temporarily during processing. So this is something, your RAM, random access memory. So in the RAM, the data is not stored permanently, rather it will be stored temporarily during processing. So if you are playing some song from 100 songs, only that song will be brought to the RAM. Okay, whatever data is under processing, currently under processing, only that data will be saved inside the RAM. Rest of the things, it will be stored on the secondary storage, that is hard drive. Okay, the data in primary memory are erased when the computer is turned off. It is volatile memory type. So whatever data we are storing inside the primary memory, it is volatile. Volatile in the sense, when the power goes down, the data will be lost or the data will be deleted. Okay. Uh, there is another type of primary memory which is ROM, read-only memory, and it is a non-volatile memory. It is a special type of primary memory. It is non-volatile memory, and whatever content we are storing inside the ROM, it is permanent. And who will store that content? In the sense, the manufacturers. We are not doing any manipulations, we are not doing any changes to the ROM content. It is a one-time stored content, and that will be stored by the manufacturers of the computers. We are not responsible for deleting or changing the content inside the ROM, read-only memory. Okay, every single thing, RAM, ROM, everything is having its own responsibility inside the computer. Okay. So if you need more information about this ROM and RAM, you can go to the net and you can do surfing and you can get the knowledge on these two things, because these two, whenever we are talking about these ROMs, RAMs, EPROMs, okay, many different things we have. It is completely the electronic concept. Okay, if you have some kind of enthusiasm, I mean, how these chips will work, you can do your own research, because here the time is a constraint. Because of that time constraint, I may not be able to explain all those things over here. Okay, so already I have given the information about this ROM and RAM. ROM is nothing but read-only memory, and it is also used to store the information and data instructions. Even if the computer goes down, I mean the power to the computer goes down, the content of the ROM will remain unchanged. Okay. Uh, the contents, yeah, here read the second point. I explained this one already. The contents in the ROM can't be modified once if they are written. So who will write that content? In the sense, we are not writing. The manufacturers of the computer will write. So it is used to store BIOS information, which is helpful in loading the operating system into the RAM from HDD. So in order to load the operating system, so whenever we turn on the computer, what will happen? The loading of operating system will start. What is loading? From where to where the operating system will be loaded? In general, all the operating system related files will be stored inside hard drive, HDD. So when you turn on the computer, what will happen? The operating system files will be stored from HDD to RAM. Okay, will be copied from HDD to RAM. So this is what will happen. Next is RAM, random access memory. We have enough knowledge about this RAM, random access memory. It stores the data instructions when the computer is turned on. So when the computer is actually functioning, from where we are getting the display, from where we are getting the results, in the sense from the RAM only. Okay, remember this one. The contents in the RAM can be modified any number of times. It is not like that the content are permanent. You can modify any number of times. Okay. It is used to store the programs under execution. Whatever things they are under execution, currently you are viewing, currently you are seeing on the monitor, all those things are available, readily available inside the RAM. Okay. The content of RAM are volatile. That means if the power goes down, the content will be deleted. So because of that reason only, whenever we start the computer, immediately what will happen? We are not getting the display, isn't it? We have to load the content into the RAM before getting the display. So that loading, it may take like some time, and that time period we are calling it as the booting process. What is booting process? Loading the operating system and its associated files from the hard drive to the RAM. That is nothing but the booting process. Hopefully you understood. Then the secondary storage devices or secondary memory, auxiliary memory, it is completely non-volatile memory. Whenever we are saying secondary storage, you consider it as non-volatile, means permanent content. Okay, non-volatile means permanent content. Even if you delete, even if you cut off the power to the computer, so what will happen? Whatever content you have inside the hard drive, inside the secondary storage devices, inside the auxiliary memory, they will remain unchanged. Okay, they will remain as it is. Okay. Uh, so these secondary storage devices, they are of two types. One is magnetic storage and other one is optical storage. Magnetic storage are nothing but the cassettes kind of thing. In olden days, we used to use these cassettes for storing the songs. Okay, storing these songs, and VCRs, if you might have heard this term. In that also we use these video cassettes. In that we are going to have this magnetic tapes, magnetic film kind of thing. On that the data will be stored, the information will be stored. Okay, so the examples for magnetic storage are the floppy disks, hard disks and magnetic tapes. Okay, and then we have the optical storage. So the optical storage devices that use laser beams. Okay, in order to read and in order to write the data, optical storage devices, they are nothing but the compact discs, CDs, DVDs. Okay, so inside these CDs and DVDs, we use laser beams to read and write data. Okay, we call them as optical storage devices. After that primary and secondary memory types, we also have few other memory types like cache memory and CPU registers. Cache memory, you can remember it as a super fast memory. Okay, and it is directly accessible by the CPU. the contents are volatile again. Whatever content we are storing inside the cache memory, they will be lost once the power goes down. Okay, the um, uh, the reason for maintaining this cache memory, just to avoid the delays between reading and writing processes, because the computer, the CPU, when we are talking, it is very fast inside the computer. And if the CPU is very fast, it needs the input, or it gives the output very quickly, very fastly. So, and our other devices, our input devices, output devices, or other storage devices, they are very slow. So in between, what we do means we maintain buffers, and this cache memory is one such type. It will act like a buffer between the slower devices and the faster devices. Okay, so and these cache memories, as they are faster memories, super fast memories, we maintain them in small amount, because whenever the memory becomes faster, the price of that memory will also become high, because they are very much costlier. Your cache memories, they are very much costlier. We maintain these cache memories in smaller amounts. Inside our computers, we maintain them in smaller amounts. Then we have the CPU registers. What are CPU registers? They are the internal components of your CPU. These memories we are having internal to the CPU, inside the CPU. Inside the CPU also, we need to store the information, or we need to store the data for processing. So inside the CPU, to store the data or to store the information, we make use of these CPU registers. And these CPU registers, they are way costlier than your cache memories. Okay. So this is the block diagram. This is another diagram of your computer. All these things we discussed. So now in today's class, we need to discuss about the software. And immediately after the discussion of this software part, will conclude the session. And in our next class, we'll see the computer languages and other stuff. Because we got a gap in between, before our, I mean, after the last class and before today's class, we got some gap in between. So that's the reason we are, I mean, I'm revising these stuff over here. Okay. The computer software, when we are talking about the computer software, it is a virtual component. It is not the physical component which we can touch and sense. It is the virtual components. Okay, computer software is the virtual component. And how we can define the software, in the sense, it is a collection of programs. It is not just the single line of instructions. It is a collection of instructions, or collection of programs, that tells the hardware how to do its job. So whenever you are performing a job inside the computer, whenever you are performing a particular action inside the computer, you have to tell the computer how to do it. Because we said many times, the computer is a dumb device. It don't know, I mean, without a prior instruction, it don't know how to achieve, how to perform a task. And that task also, every time you have to tell the computer. Suppose you have you performed addition of two numbers just now, and again you are performing the addition of two numbers. Even if you are performing the addition of two numbers second time, again you have to tell the computer how to perform the addition of two numbers for the second time also, because it will not remember anything. It will not remember. So that kind of thing, how we achieve means simply with the help of stored instructions. Instead of giving the program input again and again, what we do means we do it in terms of stored instructions. Though that stored instructions are nothing but your softwares. Okay, so software is nothing but, it is a collection of programs or instructions that tells the hardware how to do its job. Okay, these instructions need to be written in a programming language. Okay, generally the computer programs or the instructions to the computer, we are not writing, I mean, we are not um doing in our natural language, because we already discussed the computer will understand only the machine language. And before converting that machine language instructions, we need an intermediary language. That intermediary language is nothing but our C language. Once again, we'll have the discussion on this one. So you remember, all the instructions given to the computer, they must be written in any of the programming language, okay, that the computer can understand. So here we have the representation of computer software, how it is being classified into different categories. So your computer software, it is being divided into two types, system software and application software. Okay, what is system software? System software, we have operating system, we have system support, we have system development. System software, it is divided into three types: operating system software, system support software, and system development software. Then we have application software. It is also divided into two types: application software, the general purpose, and the application specific. Okay, quickly we'll discuss all these types with suitable examples so that you can remember. Software is nothing but instructions to the computer. Remember this one. Instructions are the collection of programs. Okay. System software. So in order to, whenever we are saying system software, you remember that it is something which manages the entire computer. So inside your computer, whatever hardware components, whatever interfaces we are having, in order to manage, or in order to provide a kind of interaction, we make use of this system software. So if you read the first statement over here, it manages the computer resources and provides interface between the user and the computer hardware. So we, the users, and we are having the computer hardware, and without this software, it is very difficult. You simply, you can't interact with the computer hardware without the proper software installed. Okay, so this system software, it provides an interaction between the hardware and the user, and system software does not serve the user needs directly. Okay, it is divided into three classes: operating system, system support, and system development. So operating system, I mean, we all are aware of this term, operating system. This is the basic requirement whenever we are going for a computer, or whenever we are going for a mobile phone, or any type of device. Okay, nowadays even the televisions, they are coming up with an operating system. Even your washing machines, they are having an operating system. Your microwave ovens, they are having operating systems. Your refrigerators, they are having operating systems. Okay, smart TVs, when we are talking about, they are having their own operating systems. Mobile phones, smartphones, they are having operating systems in them. So it serves like an interface. What exactly this operating system, in the sense, it serves like an interface. You have the computer hardware, you have the mobile phone in your hand. Okay, mobile phone hardware in your hand. How you are going to interact with the hardware, in the sense, with the help of this operating system only. You want to play some song using the speakers, definitely you need to open the mobile phone, and inside that mobile phone you have to select a song and you have to play. You want to watch a movie on the display of the mobile phone, definitely you have to open a movie and you have to play that movie. Okay, you want to make a call using the hardware, again you need to depend on the operating system only. You have to dial the number and you have to make a call. Likewise, okay, audio call, video call, surfing on the internet, any kind of action you want to perform using the mobile hardware, you definitely need to interact with Android, isn't it? Without Android, it is not possible. Assume that your mobile phone switched off. That means operating system Android is not loaded into that one. Your mobile phone is switched off and you have not loaded the Android operating system. Can you perform? I mean, is it possible to perform any kind of operation, even a single kind of task, when the mobile phone or the computer is in off condition? Not possible. You have the hardware, but you cannot perform any kind of action. The reason, because the operating system is not loaded. In order to load the operating system, what we have to do, we have to turn on the computer, we have to turn on the mobile phone, switch on the mobile phone. So once the mobile phone is switched on, then you can perform all operations, all actions without any difficulty, isn't it? So there comes the need, there comes the importance of operating system. And the examples for operating systems, we have many. If you are dealing with Windows computer, your Microsoft Windows is the example. Okay, if you are going for Linux, Linux is the example. We have Mac OS, Apple computer, in that Mac OS, iOS, in your Apple mobile phones, iOS. Then in your Android mobiles, Android, Samsung mobiles, Android is the operating system. Okay, uh, we have many different types of operating systems. You can have a research on these operating system types and operating system examples. You can go to the net and you can surf about it. Uh, how the evolution of operating systems have been done from the ancient days to the modern computers. Okay. Yes, whenever we say operating system, you remember it as an interface between the computer hardware and the user. Okay, it keeps the system operating in an efficient manner. That is not the only responsibility of the operating system to give the interface, but also it has to maintain, it has to manage all the components, all the hardware components efficiently. Okay, that is another job. So then we have the system support software. Okay, support softwares means uh, not only the managing of the hardware, but also we have operations like when you want to format a disk. Suppose you have a pen drive and you want to format it, or any other partition inside your computer. You may be having more than one volume or more than one partition, and if you want to uh, format that partition, and uh, you want to perform some sort of sorting operations like sorting the numbers and of such kind of things, you can perform with the help of this system support softwares. Okay, it provides system utilities and other operating system services. System utilities include sorting programs and disk formatting programs. Other operating system services are performance statistics and security monitoring and protecting the system and data. See here, performance statistics in the sense how good your CPU is performing inside your computer, how efficiently the RAM memory is used inside your computer, in order to check that kind of statistics, that kind of how efficiently we are utilizing the network resources. To check all that statistics, we are having different utility programs inside the computer. So those utility programs comes under system support software. And security monitoring in the sense we are having firewalls, we are having disk formatting techniques, and we are also having Windows security softwares like antiviruses. Okay, nowadays your Windows is coming with a default operating, I mean default antivirus application, isn't it? Windows Defender we call it as. So such type of things comes under the security monitoring softwares. Okay, security monitoring to protect the system and to protect the data. And the third type of system software, that is system development software. Okay, the language translators to convert the program from one language to another language, like your compilers, interpreters, all those things comes under system development softwares. And debugging tools to make the program error free, or to make the softwares error free. Okay, all those things will also comes under the system development softwares. Then computer assisted software engineering, we call it as case. Okay, so that software is also example for system development. Basically, in order to have a new modules of the softwares ready for use, we make use of these system development softwares. Then We have the application softwares. It is directly responsible for solving the user problems. See, system softwares or system support tools, whatever we discussed so far, the user, in order to check the statistics only, he can interact with. He cannot he cannot make those softwares to function directly. Okay. But these application softwares, they are completely in the control of the end user, and the end user can change the working of these application softwares. He is having the direct interaction. The application softwares are responsible for solving the user needs directly. Okay. So it is divided into two classes: general purpose softwares and application specific softwares. General purpose means they are going to have more than one functionality. Okay, they can be used for more than one applications. That's just now I have explained that one. General purpose softwares, they can be used for more than one application. Okay, they are called as general purpose because they can be used to solve a variety of user computing problems, like your Microsoft Word processor, MS Word we are having. MS Word can be used to solve many problems, isn't it? You want to write a letter, you can write. You want to prepare a document, you can prepare. Okay, and you are noting down some important points, you can. Okay, you want to do some text formatting, that also you can do inside the MS Word. So all that different purposes we can solve with the help of MS Word. So MS Word is an example for general purpose application. So different database management tools, like we discussed SQL. Okay, structured query language, SQL, that comes under database management system. So that structured query language database management system can be used for a variety of databases to interact. A database of health department, a database of defense department, a database of finance department. We can manipulate all these different types of databases with the help of this structured query language database management system. Okay, so because of that reason, we are calling the database management system as a general purpose software, because it can be used in many different domains. Domain is not specific over there. And the computer aided design system, CAD, computer aided design system, in the sense CAD. Okay, civil people, mechanical people, they will understand this one. So CAD application, CAD software, it can be used to design many different things. It can be used to design house. It can be used to design the plumbing structure, the electrical structure. It can be used to design the transportation, bridges and all. So for many different reasons, for many different purposes, we are using this CAD. So that's the reason we are calling CAD as an general purpose software. Even the internal parts of your computer, if you want to design, you can design on the CAD. The internal parts of your automobiles, like motorcycles, your bikes and cars, the internal machinery or the internal structure, internal design, you can do it on CAD. Okay, next is application specific software. They're not built for more than one application. They built for only one specific application. They can be used only for the task for which they are designed. So these type of applications, application specific softwares, we can design and we can utilize only for a specific task. They cannot be used as a general purpose application. Okay, more than one task. Example, the ledger systems. Ledger in the sense, if you have the knowledge of share market, shares, debentures, there they use the ledger system in order to do the calculation. So that ledger system we cannot use for designing something, isn't it? It is application specific. The ledger system, it is helpful only to the banking people, and only they use that ledger system. And material management system, I mean, if a kirana store we are having, they are maintaining their materials with the help of a software. Can we use that software for our purposes? No, it is helpful only to the kirana people. Okay, and such type of examples I can give for these application specific softwares. Simply remember, there is no general purpose kind of thing you can perform with the help of application specific software. Then if you see the relationship between the system software, application software, and the user and the hardware in the sense. See here the complete uh, uh, thing I can represent with the help of this simple figure. Here we are having different layers into this picture. The the innermost layer, the blue circle, okay, it is having the computer hardware. The innermost circle is having the computer hardware, and this yellow circle on top of that is the system software. This one is the system software, and this green circle is the application software, and finally the outermost layer, okay, outermost layer is the user. Okay, so here the user, if he wants to interact with the computer hardware, he cannot interact with the computer hardware directly. Okay, he has to go either through application software. So if the user is interacting with the application software in turn interacting with the system software, and finally the system software is interacting with the hardware. So in this way the user can interact with the computer hardware. So either he has to use the application software. First way is using the application software. Even if he is using the application software in turn interacts with the system software, and finally the system software will interact with the hardware. Or he can go, I mean here you can see this notch, this area, this special area from here to here. We have some special area. Using this special area also the user can interact. Here this area, this white layer is nothing but user only. So the user can directly interact with the system software if he needs. So where again the system software will interact with the hardware. So in this way the user can accomplish his task in two different ways. One with the help of application softwares, and the other one with the help of system softwares. In both the ways, either if he is interacting with the application software or if he is interacting with the system software, in both the ways he has to get his job done by the computer hardware itself. Hopefully you understood this one. Okay, the computer languages that we will discuss in our next session. Okay, so be prepared for these sessions, these theory classes, and try to answer the queries what I am asking inside the um, attendance form. Because if you answer the queries, then only I will give the attendance. Otherwise you won't get any attendance, and at the end, at the time of internals, at the time of externals, just don't run for the attendance. Hopefully you understood. So getting the attendance, in order to get the attendance, the only possible way is you have to satisfy the query and you have to give the attendance through Google form only. Hopefully you understood. Thank you very much, students.